Welcome back to RecalibrAgency. I'm honored today to be joined by my good friend, Danielle Russell. She is the president at Builder Funnel. Welcome, Danielle. And today we're going to be talking about some lessons that she's learned in developing teams and especially in maximizing talent density at your agency. So, Danielle, would you share a little bit more about yourself and about Builder Funnel?
Yes. Well, first of all, Danielle, so fun to be on this. I missed having to say our names back and forth to each other and confusing everyone else in the room and everyone who's listening to us. So thank you
Yes,
for having me on.
of course.
Yeah, so I have been in the agency world for about 7 years now. Started at the entry level position at Builder Funnel, the agency that I'm currently working at, and grew to be very passionate about helping to onboard new teammates and what does success look like in that role as an agency grows. What are those expectations and how do we train? How do we hire for that? So then I was our new teammate onboarding success manager. And from there, grew into the inbound marketing director role as our delivery team grew a lot over the past 4 or 5 years. I think that probably sounds familiar to a lot of the listeners right now. And then most recently for the past 2 years, president at Builder Funnel. So really focused on day-to-day operations and everything in between.
Absolutely. And because you stepped into roles that didn't exist prior to you, you had a lot of learning curves and a lot of gaps to try to fill pretty quickly as well because of the agency goals that were set before you. So, what were some of the key gaps that you knew that you needed to fill as you were developing the team?
That's a really good question. In particular, for myself, anytime you have to create a role that doesn't exist, you're learning on the fly. A lot of podcasts, a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of watching Carl Sagas agency hours, a lot of reading, a lot of self-reflection. And I think that's a really important key piece that people need to remember is to be patient with yourself. You're also learning a new role. In terms of creating new roles that haven't existed before and trying to hire and develop for that, I would start with the same answer in that a lot of it is you can learn from what people have already done in the past. You can test things out. Don't go all the way, all in without having actual results that your team can prove. So, for example, maybe you're just doing a test run of something. You are asking one person to see if they can take on a new role before you say, okay, now everyone, we're adding this to your role, right? So then once you start testing, some key pieces that come from that, really, you're identifying who. So you need to know who can do this. Who do you trust? Who is motivated? Who's going to be able to not just create this new role, but also the description for it and the expectations around it and training on how to get there and what success looks like in that role. Um, and then you're starting to develop an actual onboarding and scalable training process around that role. A lot of that means setting new goals. What is the goal of this role? How is it helping your overall agency goal? How is it going to help you grow in the right direction and what you're trying to accomplish? And then figuring out the right tracking for progress as someone grows in that role, because everybody needs to know that they're doing a good job and what they need to be working on to keep growing in that role. So, with progress tracking comes performance appraisals and lots of one on one mentoring and making sure that there's that clear communication and they know you're there for them. You'll answer questions. You're as invested in their success as they are. And then you go for it.
You go for it, you see what happens, you launch, analyze, tweak, repeat. That's my motto anyways. When you're working through these challenges, because they're variable in specific contexts of your agency, who you're serving, how you're looking to move forward, and even the other team members involved, what are you looking most for in those measures of success for a new role?
Usually there's a vision forward for the company, right? So you're able to, it really all starts with having your own Here's the short term goal for the company. Here's the midterm goal for the company. Here's what that's going to look like in 10 years or however you're planning. I like to do that usually like 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. And is this decision I'm making today moving us in the right direction for all of those? Sitting down and really thinking through number one, is this something that someone else is going to care enough to accomplish also? I think it's important to keep in mind what needs to stay on your plate or a founder's plate, because at the end of the day, no one's going to care as much about your agency as you do, right? And that there is the clear distinction between leadership and ownership. So making sure that anything you're putting in someone's new role is something that they can accomplish, want to do. And then you're really just thinking about how this is accomplishing your company's core values, this individual's personal growth goals, professional growth goals, and asking them what matters to them. And at the same time, making sure you're aligning the actual growth goals of your agency. So it'll help you make sure it's the right person and also that it's the right role and you have the right role description and you're able to personally track as their supervisor if they're successful in that role and also at the same time if that role is successful for the company.
Especially when an agency is scaling, there's a lot of debate over whether hiring is the better move or hiring from within is the way to go. What's your perspective?
I am a big proponent, sometimes to my own disadvantage. So I will talk about this a little bit at length here, but I'm a big proponent of hiring from within, promoting from within, training and developing the talent that is already proven loyal to your agency, as long as you know that this person can accomplish it. Because there is a certain point, the Peter principle, where you can promote someone beyond what they're actually capable of doing, and then everybody loses. So at some point, if no one on your team is ready for a role, then it is probably better to start recruiting and trying to hire outside. But if there's someone who is showing all of the right, uh, your core values, the right motivation, initiative, they're able to stay motivated while working remote. A lot of the things that you are looking for that you think they can learn the rest, I'm a big fan of promoting from within and helping a person achieve their own personal growth goals.
What do those conversations look like internally?
For me, anyone who knows me knows I'm very, what you see is what you get. I am very genuine and I like having those vulnerable conversations. I think they're one of the most meaningful moments in leadership for me personally. I love sitting down with someone and talking about what they want and how I can help them get there inside and outside of work. I really care about the person, and I do think it has to start there. You can't fake caring about someone and wanting them to be successful in a role. It has to come from somewhere very genuine within you. So it starts there, having the very vulnerable conversation. Hey, you're doing really great at all of these things. You've really mastered the role that you're in, and the company is going in this direction. And I think you're the right person to help us get there. Here's what I'm currently missing. Do any of these align with your professional growth goals? And usually, of course, you don't go into that meeting blind, right? You've kind of been nurturing along the way to make sure that the things that you're about to list are things that they're actually excited about and passionate about, want to learn, or are already learning outside of work anyway, but then they get to implement it at work. So some of it is upfront knowing your people really well and then navigating that conversation in real time and then just being there for all of their questions afterwards. And you're probably not going to have the answer, especially if it's a new role. So being able to address that, let them know you're figuring it out together, but here's the path forward.
In your experience, have those leaders within the team typically emerged and shown themselves clearly in their existing roles? Or Are you having to dig out an understanding of who would fit the gaps that you're trying to fill?
Both. So a lot of my leaders on the team right now were quiet leaders in the background who were what we call managing up previously. So there are definitely people on your team who are fully capable and willing to start to take on leadership without raising their hand first. So, as a leader, and especially if you're their supervisor, a lot of times you're going to need to read between the lines and take the time to get to know that person and get to know if there's even someone who they're reporting to, talk to them intimately also and know if this person is ready and how to start giving them some next steps. And I've also had plenty of people who raised their hand or came to me with a proposal and said, I've identified this gap. Here are some ideas on how I think we can close that gap. Here's why I think I'm the right person to do this. Here are some ways that I think we'll know if it's successful and when it's successful and what I think the future of this role looks like. I've certainly had the opportunity where people will come to me with solutions. Other times I do have to dig a little bit because people do have solutions that uh, they're we'll call it humble. They're quiet and they're not sure that they're the right person. So you kind of have to identify for them that they're the right person.
Yeah, there's this interesting concept within human nature that some people are more prone to just be willing to risk their idea, and others are much more hesitant to share what they think. And as a manager, you have to be wary of boxing everyone into either one or the other kinds of positions and look at it in context with the person one on one that you're evaluating.
Absolutely. I think people go through different phases in their lives too. So even if when you hire someone for an entry level position, they might be quiet and reserved and just want to really learn that role and gain mastery in that role. But you, as a leader on the team or their manager, have to let them evolve in the way that you view them from hiring day to 1 to 2 years down the road. They could be in a phase where they feel very comfortable in their role. They're ready for more. They're looking for ways to be promoted or fill gaps in your agency, and your vision of them has to be able to evolve with them as they're growing.
That could be a difficult perspective change and adaptation that has to take place within the manager as well. What tips do you have?
Oh, geez. A growth mindset is so important in all agencies. I think that's, if you haven't read that, that's a great book by Carol Dweck. So absolutely make sure that you're hiring for people with a growth mindset and not that fixed mindset. It all starts there. So even if you're entry level positions, if they have a growth mindset, all of the managers on your team should too by then. So everyone should be able to identify when someone is performing well and how to help them perform better. And everybody should be bought in on one another's success. Everything that we do is better when everyone on the team gets better. So it leads to team retention. So if you like working with who you're working with, you're absolutely invested in their success. It leads to client retention. It leads to upsells. It leads to all the good things at work when the whole team is invested in seeing one another growing.
What have you seen happen when the team culture is shaken by a new hire that isn't the right fit, or they're just not quite there and they haven't grasped the skills even after 3 or 6 months of being in the role? What have you seen that do to the ability to develop a really strong team?
Yes, this is a hard topic for any supervisor. So thanks for asking me, Danielle. But I very much believe in hire slow, fire fast. And every single moment that the team is seeing someone who is still on the team who isn't performing at the level they need to be performing at, you're giving permission to perform at that level also, or you're giving permission that other people need to be working overtime to cover for them. Either way, it's toxic or leading to mediocrity, and that's not the culture that you want. That is not leading to talent density. It's letting your A players know that either they need to step up and become A plus plus players to cover for the Bs on the team, or it's telling them, actually, you can stay here if even if you're not an A player. So why would you be an A player if anything under that is acceptable?
Can we dig into that concept of talent density a little bit more? Because ultimately, in an agency, the people make the place. So, can we dig into that a little bit more?
Of course. I'm on your podcast. Let's talk about it.
What have you learned about creating a talent dense environment where not only are individual team members thriving, but the agency is thriving and clients are noticing really good results because of that talent density?
Yep. Great question. Okay. So I have a lot of different answers. One, beginning with there's no nice way of saying this, but taking advantage of opportunities. And we're in an opportunity right now for anyone who's listening. There are a lot of layoffs happening right now, especially in the tech industry. There are a lot of extremely talented people looking for work. And if you have openings or if you're looking for, if you have the mindset that you can always be recruiting and keeping a warm bench, today's the day. Stop waiting. Go start taking advantage of this opportunity. We had a similar opportunity during COVID in terms of lots of agencies slowed down, pulled back, laid off, and we did the opposite. We identified the opportunity and hired a lot of the top talent that was let go from other agencies. So it starts there with taking advantage of opportunities, even if it's a little bit scary, because once you get those very talent rich, we'll call it, leaders on your team, they can just take off. They're like these shooting stars on your team that will build and develop talent dense teams around them. And then they're also the ones who are saying, "Hey, what if we tried this?" And you say, "Yes, you should try that." And then it's flexibility in roles, titles, development. You're basically you can follow their lead when you have a really talent rich person who is building that talent dense team.
Yeah, leading from behind is a concept that you and I both really respect because you're not dragging people with you. You're actually helping clear stuff out of the way for them and pushing them forward on items that are happening of their own initiative, which is a much more effective way to lead people.
Absolutely. It's very different for the whole team to see that also because it's one thing when Danielle Russell says, I need you to learn how to do this and have this certificate by this date. It's totally different when their strategist or their account manager is saying, hey, I did this. It's helped me accomplish this and this and this. And now I'm going to start doing this. And here's why I think all of this is helpful for you. It feels like it's someone on the team who's looking out for them instead of a manager who's just adding new KPIs, if you will, to their performance appraisal and like what's expected of them.
Definitely, the team is feeding off of each other in a very positive way in that kind of environment.
Absolutely. And you it's one of those things where you know it when you see it, and if it's not on your team right now, then you might not know it yet. You really have to have one of those extremely talent-rich people who starts to bring out the talent density in others or help you hire and train and identify in interviews who those people are, who they want to work with, who gets them excited. And again, just letting them lead that and create their own team.
What kind of changes in client retention have you seen because of having a strong focus over the last 4 to 5 years on talent density?
Great question. Before we started taking advantage of opportunities, let's start there. Our client retention was, I think, average agency. What is average agency retention right now, Danielle?
Oh, put me on the spot for a pop quiz. It's probably between 35 and 45%.
Yeah, I was gonna say for sure under 50%. And we were right around like 48 to 50 month to month, depending on who knows, the breeze. Once we started taking advantage of opportunities and hiring and identifying the key players on our team, in a span of 1 year, we went up to 80%. And then the next year, we're getting closer and closer to 88%, inching towards 90 right now, and that's year over year. So quarter over quarter can be a little bit more of like a drastic change, and it's consistently in the 90s now, but, oh, you're still pulling some of that dead weight from a lower percentage previously.
And
But
that
if we were to
you'll never
yeah.
get to 100% there.
No, and you don't want 100%. You need
Right.
the freedom to be able to work with clients that get your team excited and, let people go if they're not a good fit, and by people, I mean clients also. Like, you need to let them go when the time has come, when they're dragging down your teams. So, I mean, client retention has skyrocketed, but so has team retention. And I think for us, it all starts with team retention because other clients stay longer when they're working with the same key players longer. And we also have noticed that even if we have to tell a client that they're going to be working with a new point of contact, if we're able to say it's because their previous point of contact was promoted as opposed to is leaving, that tells the client that, like, wow, first of all, they have great talent here. They're building out really strong teams. I got to work with someone who's so talented. They're being trained by, or the new point of contact is being trained by someone who is that talented and had the initiative to grow. So clients absolutely prefer to hear that someone's staying, and the team stays, clients stay. We accomplish better results. We develop better service offerings when someone is able to identify, hey, couldn't we be doing this for our clients? They naturally go in for an upsell. They find those opportunities, whether it's through the platform that we're on or for our services themselves. Either way, they're able to keep growing accounts, make us stickier, make us better at what we're doing, and level everyone up along the way, everyone who's watching them.
It's this environment creation where clients are energized, team members are energized, and the agency growth path has this momentum, for lack of a better word, behind it because it's feeding off of each other, the client happiness, the team happiness, and everyone kind of pushing each other for better and more and growth and good things that come out of it.
Yes. And a huge benefit once you start to hire these very talent rich people, it becomes a lot easier to hire more people like them because they know people like them. So developing an internal hiring referral program, it helps me stay focused on developing our team, developing our offerings, making sure everything I can directly impact is getting done without me having to start listing jobs on Indeed and LinkedIn and posting about how we're hiring and asking everyone I know, reaching out to strangers. You're just asking your team, hey, who do you want to work with? Who do you know who would be a good fit for this team, this culture, this direction we're going? Who do you think has the work ethic, the ability to learn what we're looking to accomplish? And we have grown the team very sustainably by doing this.
Mhm. And it wasn't an overnight thing by any stretch of the imagination. You've been working on this for the good part of 5 years now, and this is now where you're at. What advice would you give to someone who is in the situation you were in about 5 years ago, trying to get started to achieve this really great situation that you now have going on for your agency?
It's unfortunately one of the hardest things that you are going to have to learn and develop this muscle for yourself, but knowing when to be kind versus nice. It's a tricky situation. Nice, essentially, you're being amenable. You're not holding the team accountable. You don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. You're cushioning feedback. And everybody is left feeling unclear after that meeting, right? The person who you talk to leaves the room like, I think I'm doing well, right? Because I had 2 pros and a grow. I feel like 2 out of 3 is great. I'm nailing it. And you're walking out like, I think they understood what I was trying to say. And nobody is on the same page. And being kind is actually caring about someone enough to foster their growth and let them know that they're doing a great job and you know they can do better. And here are the 3 things that would really help them take this role to the next level. Here's why it matters. Here's who it impacts. Here's what it looks like for them when they reach these goals. But you also have to gain that trust, to have that kind of conversation with someone and to like develop that talent rich person. You have to, I just heard this in a leadership talk recently, so it's not mine. You have to continually be depositing into that trust bank. So you have to constantly tell someone when they're doing something great. You have to give them recognition, give them those words of affirmation, let them know they're doing a good job because one day you will have to make a deposit. And these kinds of conversations are that deposit where you're saying, you are absolutely crushing it. I love working with you. You need to be doing better at this. And that's a deposit. You're taking something away from them. You're leaving them feeling a little bit like, oh, shoot, I'm not perfect. I need to figure this out. So, as long as that conversation is had when the trust has been built and this person feels like they can trust you, you have their best, you have good intentions, you have their best in mind, and you are helping them accomplish what you know they're capable of. But in order to get there, this person needs to even, like, know what their role is, right? So, you have to have a very clearly written role description. You have to have expectations around that. There should be timelines around that. You could even tier, we have level 1, 2, and 3 within each of our roles. So, there's the onboarding. Here's what we expect during onboarding. Here's what we expect in your first year. Here's what we expect in role mastery. And now let's talk about your growth path from there. You should be having biweekly or monthly one-on-ones depending on how many people they're already reporting to. So if it's someone who's right under you, for example, an account manager who is responsible for client retention of 20 clients, let's say, and they have a strategist and a specialist under them, you should be meeting with them more frequently than you're meeting with the strategist or the specialist because they're meeting all the way up. And clear communication. They need to know. You need to have those kind versus nice conversations. And the worst thing you can do is not be clear and walk out of that meeting and neither of you know what's coming next or if you're on the same page. And then you keep being nice to each other. You're going to lose that person.
Reality that in agencies, many times managers who are promoted from within are promoted to a manager position because they are liked by the team, because they are so nice, can in and of itself be the very roadblock that prevents them from being kind and decisive and actionable with their feedback. And it allows toxicness to simmer in the background sometimes. And that is going to be a big pitfall that needs to be overcome.
Absolutely. To speak directly to that, if you're promoting anyone to a level where they are giving someone feedback and that person's role is contingent on this feedback, you need to see a proven track record of them being able to give meaningful feedback because that is a skill that takes a long time to foster and nurture. And if you promote someone beyond their capability to give meaningful contextual feedback, that whole team, anyone who reports to them, anybody who's seeing that happen, let alone that person, are all negatively impacted until you fix the situation. And generally speaking, if you've promoted someone to that position and they can't accomplish it, it's pretty tough to be like, never mind, let's go back to the role you were in.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
most likely has to lead to some kind of shakeup one way or another, whether you have to let them go or put them on a performance improvement plan, whatever that looks like. So you need to be very confident that the person who is stepping into that position would rather be kind than nice.
How do you test that? How do you test that someone is kind, not just nice?
I make people give me feedback frequently. I like to put people on the spot. That's usually if I've ever put you on the spot to give me feedback, I'm probably testing the waters to see if you're ready to directly start managing other people. Otherwise, I give people a heads up. I have quarterly engagement surveys, team 360 feedback surveys, lots of opportunity for people to deliver feedback and have time to think about it and how they want to craft it, run it by other people, whatever that looks like. But that's a good starting point, reminding people to give feedback and that one on ones and performance appraisals are a two-way street. You should always be asking for feedback if you're the leader, if you're the one delivering. Anytime I'm giving someone feedback, I will ask for feedback also.
That's a great stress test because you're putting them in an uncomfortable position. 'Cause you're their manager and they could be like, oh, I give feedback to my manager. What if it reflects poorly on me and hinders me? But by the very nature of you putting them in that stressful situation, you can see how they're going to respond when they're uncomfortable. And giving feedback is uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And I'll know if someone comes to their one-on-one and starts off with, "Really quick, I wanted to give you some feedback on a recent meeting," or something like that, in the back of my mind, lots of check boxes are being checked.
Any other tips that you would give to managers and leaders at agencies?
Yeah, you have to you have to really, really, really care about your people. You have to be willing to take a lot longer than you thought it was gonna take. You have to be able to, hear feedback about yourself, address ways that you can be a better leader for this person, because there have been as an example, there have been times where I thought I was doing all right as a leader, but I was just getting in the way of these people who were trying to take over new roles and responsibilities within the agency. So adapting my own leadership style to support them and get out of their way and be the stairs beneath them as they're climbing up and mastering their roles and taking on the next big thing. So recognizing when you honestly just need to let go and take a step back and make sure they have what they need to succeed.
Do you have any book or podcast or other resource recommendations for managers looking to grow more leaders on their team?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. This I feel very passionately about being able to develop yourself, and a lot of that comes from reading for me personally. For new managers, I would recommend number 1, The Making of a Manager. It is about Facebook and how they started identifying managers versus just the best engineer on a team, for example, and then how to build a team of engineers, which can't be easy. Lead yourself first. So, all about how to develop yourself into a strong leader, the kind of leadership that people want to follow, and how you can embody that, which I think is a big piece that's missing in a lot of brand new leaders. There's a lot of do as I say, not as I do. And this book is all about addressing that. And then also leader shift, which is a lot about how to care about people, which sounds really ridiculous, but I do think there are different versions of caring about people and caring for people and how to communicate in a way that's going to help someone want to grow and recognize their own growth areas and areas of opportunity, if you will, because just telling someone that you want them to do better at something doesn't mean they agree or will be able to comprehend what where the dots aren't connecting. And then if you are creating a new role, which we talked about towards the beginning of this episode, the first 90 days, very, very helpful book in how to either if you are the one who is creating that new role or if you're helping someone create a new role on the team, What does the first 90 days look like? And how do you get team buy-in and understanding around that role? And then if you're not sure if you're ready for a new role or if it's just a new, um, if you're adding on to an existing role, who, not how. And that will help you be able to identify, is this just something that I'm going to own? Is this something someone else should be owning because they can take it and focus on it and turn it into a successful endeavor?
A risk of making this book recommendation section super long. I'm going to add three more. The first is The 1 Minute Manager. It's a very quick read as well. You can read it in about an hour. And the application techniques within are very concrete, so you can start applying them very easily. The next is Turn the Ship Around. And that one's really good if you're struggling with the concept of how do I lead from behind versus playing that role of leader follower. And then the third would be extreme ownership, especially in the agency world where there's a lot of fluidity and change that happens, enabling people to see that the decisions that they're making on the ground tactically are what's actually driving high level success as well, is a lot of what that book frames around.
I've read all of those and I retweet Danielle. Those are all excellent. You should read them.
Danielle, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. It's been learned over many years. I know you've had to adapt and change and grow yourself. As you've witnessed how different techniques work out within the context of an agency with different people too. And I've witnessed it firsthand, so I can vouch for the tips and the recommendations that Danielle is giving here as well. Thank you again to Danielle Russell for sharing all of those words of wisdom. There are a few that stand out from that episode that I want to call attention back to. The first is making sure that you are genuine and caring as a manager. Caring about someone is not something that you can fake. There isn't a set of the right words or the right way to say something when you're giving feedback. It's about genuinely caring about the person that you're talking to. The next is on that same line of thought, being kind instead of being nice. The distinction being that when you're just nice, you're not actually helping them necessarily the ways that they need to be helped in order to be successful in their role and at your agency. So the principle being that instead of just being nice, it's better to be kind. And kindness involves giving feedback, being direct, being approachable still, but being firm in your assessment and in your approach to getting them to where they need to be. Thank you for watching. Thank you again to Danielle Russell. That's all for today's episode on RecalibrAgency. I'm your host, Danielle Photo. Cheers until next time.